Okay, you're on. You're on.
Welcome to the Tuesday Doctor's Call, where we're having all kinds of music and fun today. We have this call every Tuesday. I'm Andrea from Michigan. I'm the host of the call, and we have a professional in the house, Dr. Kurt Fisnett, who volunteers his time and his wisdom every Tuesday at noon to share with us health matters, health benefits, things you can do to improve your health, and why not get a free consultation with a doctor every Tuesday, right? Because if it doesn't affect you, it probably affects someone you know. So go ahead and invite your friends. We hope you enjoy the call and that you will tune in again next Tuesday. Go ahead, Doc. What are we going to talk about?
Hey, Andrea, how are you doing this morning? Well, today we're going to talk about we're going to talk about neuroplasticity. You know what that means?
I don't know. It kind of sounds like a bunch of plastic that you bend. I don't know.
Well, if you look at the photo that's on the screen, it's got rubber bands in it. What's the crazy thing about rubber bands?
They spring back?
They spring back. You can stretch them and they bounce back, right? But if you stretch them enough, guess what happens?
Snap.
Well, they snap if you stretch it too far, but what I'm talking about is that if you stretch them enough, they eventually become longer.
Right.
Right? And so there's a couple things that are going on when we're talking about the brain, and that is that when we're talking about neuroplasticity, it's an umbrella term that refers to being able to take your brain and reorganize it physically and functionally throughout your life. And this can affect a lot of different things. It can affect people who have had traumatic brain injuries. It can affect people that have problems due to neurotoxicity. It can be issues dealing with nutrition, all these things. Even aging. Neuroplasticity is important when we're talking about aging.
That's cool, because I think kind of the general consensus years ago was that, once your brain was in one kind of condition, that's where it was stuck.
That's right. They said that the brain was basically physiologically, it was static. It wouldn't grow, it wouldn't change. It was hardwired after a certain period of time. And you do have more neuroplasticity. It's more plastic during the early years because you're growing and you're filling it up with memories and things like that, but that capacity does decline with age. But what they're finding now is that plasticity happens all the way through life. Isn't that cool?
Yes.
Yeah, and it makes the brain resilient, and you can just see where that's going to be important. If you have a stroke, right? If you have an injury, if you have a problem, a birth defect, if you have ADD, ADHD, depression, addiction, obsessive compulsive disorders, even Alzheimer's. And so, last night I was sitting there on the couch and I was thinking, what are we going to talk about tomorrow on the call? And that's when I kind of thought, well, I really enjoyed the talk last week. Didn't you enjoy the talk on Alzheimer's?
I think everyone got some good information out of it, for sure.
Yeah, it really does. And so here's a neuroscientist. Here's what she said. Plasticity dials back on, the on switch, in adulthood when specific conditions that enable or trigger the plasticity are met. And what research has shown is that under the right circumstances, the power of the brain can help adult minds grow. And although certain brain machinery tends to decline with age, there are steps that people can take to tap into this plasticity and reinvigorate the machinery. And then this will make it so you can have focused attention, determination, hard work, and you can maintain overall brain health. So isn't that pretty cool?
It is very cool.
Yeah, so what she goes on to say is that change is mostly limited when the brain is in the mood for it. Right? So if you're one of those people that says, I'm not going to learn anything, no, I'm not going to listen, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to absorb anything, are you?
Probably not.
Yeah. When I was in my motorcycle wreck 11 years ago, 11 years ago today, this month, I was laying in the hospital. They didn't know if they'd be able to save my leg or not, but, they told me, they said, oh, you'll never be able to walk again. And that motivates me when somebody tells me, oh, you can't do something. You have any grandchildren are that way, Andrea? Where you tell them, oh, they can't do it?
Oh, yeah.
What do they
Sure
do?
do. They do it.
They do it, right? Because the harder that you tell somebody that they can't, the harder they're going to try to do it. They're going to be more motivated, and they're going to have the better for the outcome. Even if it may not be a good thing for them, they're going to try harder because you said they couldn't do it. So what actually changes in the brain is the connection between the brain cells, and what it does is it kind of builds an army. It'd be like your grandson saying, come on, and he gets all the other grandkids to come and help him do what he's not supposed to be doing, right? They ever do that?
No, they're pretty good kids.
Okay, well, I just remember, my boys, I've got 3 boys, and my oldest one, he was the instigator. He would take and he would get the other 2 to help him do what he was doing, because somehow I think he felt like if he got everybody do it, kind of that crowd movement, that if everybody's doing, well, it's got to be right. Everybody's doing it.
Right.
Right, and then he also thought that the punishment would be spread out amongst the 3 of them instead of over one.
Well, he was pretty smart.
But your brain does the same thing. It takes and it grabs other brain cells and it incorporates them, and it makes groups of brain cells work together. So, for instance, like if I handed you a book, do you even think about taking the book and turning it over, and you just automatically read the cover, right? You want to see what the title is.
Right.
You might turn it over and look at the back and see what they have to say on it. Do you think about, oh, I need to turn the book over? I mean, you don't have to put that thought in your brain, do you?
No, you just automatically do it.
Yeah. So you've experienced what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You've experienced it. When you take and I'm not a very good golfer, but I'm going to use golfing as my example. Tiger Woods, when he goes out there and he swings that club, do you think he has to think about where he places his feet?
Probably not at this point.
Probably not at this point. Why?
Because he's practiced it over and over and over and over. And you get an innate feeling of where your body is from doing that.
Neuroplasticity, that's what it is. Exactly. And so you can take and you can change this. You can learn the change. You can learn the self, the deal, right? And so then over time, the brain strengthens its connections, and it just keeps connecting them over and over and over again. My buddy who played with Bob Dylan and he played with Steve Miller Band, Billy was telling me, he told me one time, he said, you know how to get to Carnegie Hall?
No.
Practice.
Right. I knew I heard that somewhere.
But yeah, so you do this, and then inside your brain, you kind of have this non-cognitive, or you're not having to think about it, but you rehearse it all the time. You rehearse what you're talking about, and you rehearse different things, right?
Right. Like I took piano lessons when I was a child, and I think I quit taking them in about 5th grade. I can still play like 3 or 4 songs from then. Just my fingers automatically just go where they go. And if I've kind of forgotten it, if I'd sat down to the piano and start practicing a little bit, it'll all start coming back slowly. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it, right? And so you start looking at, the brain is such a complex organ, right? And it's got an enormous number of cells. They say that the human brain has over 100 billion cells.
That's a lot of cells.
Yeah. So each cell has an outer membrane that's actually made up of fat. So if
Mm-hmm.
somebody calls you a fathead, it's probably a good thing, right?
Yeah, you should say thank you.
Thank you. You're not. The brain is actually 60% fat. And so wouldn't it be important that in your diet you bring in good fats?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a fat. We talked about it a little bit last week on the call when we were talking about Alzheimer's. We talked about something called DHA, right? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so DHA is a fat that comes from a healthy fat. It comes from the omega-3 group. It comes from fish oils, and but you can't get it. You can't get it from like flaxseed, right? And I remember back 30 years ago when I first got into practice, everybody saying, "Well, I don't like fish oil, but I take flaxseed. I use flaxseed oil."
Yeah, I
Right?
remember that.
Remember that? And you don't see that
Yep.
so much anymore. You notice that you don't notice many places promoting flaxseed,
Right.
right? Because they found that it's not quite as good. It's good, but it's not quite as good, right? And so DHA, which is the fat that's found in fish oils, it provides the structure for the transportation of proteins within the brain.
Uh-huh.
And it's critical for helping the synapses work, right? You know what synapses are?
Like connections.
Yeah, the connections. It's like think about like a spark plug, right? I'm sure you seem pretty handy with stuff, so I'm sure you looked at a spark plug, and you got that gap in a spark plug.
Yeah.
And if you put electricity through the spark plug, through the end of the spark plug, what it does is that when you pulse that electrical energy, what it does, it creates a electrical spark that jumps across the gap.
Right.
And if you want to make it so it takes less electricity, you just take and you close the gap up a little bit, right? Now it doesn't take as much power, so you're going to have a weaker spark. If you open the gap, you're going to have a stronger spark, right? That's how a spark plug works.
Okay.
What does that have to do with the brain? Well, think about this. That's what a synapse is that if you have a synapse that's got a wider gap that's harder to jump across, it's going to make that nerve so it doesn't fire as easily, right? And so you might see somebody who they can put their hand on something hot and they don't jump back quite as quickly, but you have other people that they can't even get their hand close to it. Like my black lab, he's so sensitive to heat, like he'll put his nose close to like a hot food that I'm eating, and he'll jump back. He won't eat it because it's too hot for him.
Hmm.
So his synapses are a little bit closer gap than that. But, so omega-3s are really, really important. It helps with mental health. It helps with aging. It helps with inflammation. And when we're talking about brain health, inflammation is so important, right? And because it's an abundance of omega-6. And we found a lot of omega-6 in vegetable oils. And guess what we see a lot of restaurants cooking their food in?
Right.
A lot of vegetable oil, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people do it at home too. They shouldn't.
Right.
So you want to have that balance between the omega-6s and omega-3s. You want to have that balance. Now they're finding this omega-7. They're finding omega-5s. All these different things they're finding they're so important. And that's one thing that makes our omega-3, our super omega, such a great product, right?
Yeah, because you have such a variety.
Yeah. Yeah, the omega-3s, they help out. It helps with inflammation, but it helps with those connections like we were saying, the connections, the way that your body passes protein back and forth between the cells of the brain. But omega-3s also help with increasing levels of dopamine, right? Dopamine. It's a neurotransmitter found in the brain, and then it helps out with serotonin. serotonin. That's another neurotransmitter, right? And another neurotransmitter is another one called norepinephrine or adrenaline. Another name for it is adrenaline, right?
Right.
And so when we talk about these, what comes to your mind? What do you think about?
Well, fight or flight or sleeping.
Sleeping, fight or flight, yeah, adrenaline, dopamine. You think of Parkinson's disease, right?
Oh, I thought dopamine just kind of made you a little dopey.
No, dopamine is actually the neurotransmitter that helps with that smooth movement, right? And it prevents that kind of ratchety that you see with people that have they have the Parkinson's disease.
It's kind of like motion oil.
Motion oil, yeah. We won't get into that. But magnesium threonate is another important thing. You know, I was reading up on magnesium threonate this morning. Do you know where you get magnesium threonate naturally?
No, I don't.
You don't? How come?
Because you haven't told me yet.
Well, I mean, you should know these things. You're promoting natural health, aren't you?
Yeah, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, your highly threonated food, right? Threonate, 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 magnesium threonate. It's primarily found in foods like foods that are overcooked, foods that are already starting to decompose. So if you've got some old kale in your refrigerator, and you know how it's going kind of soggy, it's kind of green. The green is really dark.
Yeah.
What do most people do with that?
Throw it away.
Throw it away. Guess why they shouldn't?
Because it has that magnesium threonate in
It's
it.
got the magnesium threonate in it. Yeah, exactly. And so the green leafy vegetables, things like that, you can take that, and if you add it to something, I'm telling people, you know, here's a tip that you can do, that you can get this from your food, because some people say, oh, I don't want to get it from supplement, I want to get it from my food. Well, here's how you do it. And so if you really want to make it work good, you take your old cabbage, broccoli, the broccoli that's, you know, starting to break down a little bit in your fridge, getting a little soggy, the kale, right? And cook it. Cook it with sesame seeds, pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to maximize the amount of magnesium threonate that's going to be given off by that food. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
It's interesting information for sure.
Yeah, so you can use that to help with all of that. So what does it do? Well, magnesium threonate, they found that it's an exciting new magnesium that was discovered, and they found that it passes through the blood-brain barrier easily. The brain has kind of a wall built around it, right? A wall that's built around it that protects things from getting in, because you don't want the bad things to get in, and you want to control the good things coming in as well. And so this magnesium threonate passes through this, and it's going to help with all these different functions, including age-dependent memory decline, which is one of the things that, you know, critical when we're talking about preventing dementia and Alzheimer's. And so when we're talking about magnesium, what it does is it activates the nerve channels that are involved with the synapses, with the plasticity of the synapses, right? So you're starting to hear these words over and over and over again. And if you're paying attention to natural health, if you're reading things, you're going to see these words, right? And you're going to hear these words being mentioned. And so, you know, in the journal, in the medical journal, Neuron, right, which I'm sure everyone reads. You read Neuron, don't you?
No, I do not. I'm not the professional here. I'm just the host.
Well, they're saying that magnesium threonate, it helps with long-term memory, quality of sleep. They're finding that it helps with learning abilities, learning new things. Like if you want to enhance your piano playing, magnesium threonate will help with that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and they found that it's the only form of magnesium that significantly passes through the blood-brain barrier. And it
Is
actually, they got the patent for it.
really, is that because the molecule is smaller?
I think because the carrier, the threonate, is the carrier that's pulling the magnesium through the gate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so Nobel Prize science there, folks. You just learned some Nobel Prize type of stuff. So then I kind of looked at, I was like, okay, well, what about other types of things, and Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, seaweed, right? And when I was reading on that, I thought, seaweed. Where do we
Huh.
where do we find out about seaweed? What's the best seaweed?
Fucoiden.
Fucoidan, yeah, and they actually list it. So then, I've got this way of thinking that I read one thing and then something pops in my head and I go, hey, well, if that's good, what about this? So then I go look up the next thing and then I'm reading the next thing and the next thing leads me to the next thing. So seaweed, here's what it says about seaweed. They're saying that seaweed helps with getting rid of inflammation, right? Bruises, swelling, inflammation, broken blood vessels, snapped nerves, different things like that. So seaweeds have been used all over the world for thousands of years, mostly in the Asian diets, Japan, Korea, China. There's 10,000 species of seaweed, and there's 3 that are the most effective, fucoidan being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that cool? It's got an anti-inflammatory effect, and what it does, it helps with creating what they call a hydrogen scaffold, right? Hydrogen scaffold.
Okay.
Right, and so you remember when I don't think you were involved with Sisel when Tom brought up the hydrogen and water machine, but he used to talk about how hydrogen is the most powerful antioxidant. So here I'm tying in some of the stuff that I learned before, that hydrogen is the most powerful antioxidant. And if we remember what antioxidants are, and I won't go into that really in depth, but antioxidants work with free radicals. Free radicals are things that get in your body that steal electrons. So hydrogen, what it does, it attaches to those free radicals and it neutralizes it. It neutralizes it down to the most stable form, versus when we talk about other antioxidants, right? Like say oxygen, it donates an electron and neutralizes the free radical, but then it becomes a free radical itself, and now you got to neutralize that one. You got to keep doing that over and over and over again. Andrea, how many times do you have to neutralize the free radical to make it so that it's basically not dangerous?
39.
Yeah. 30 to 40 different times, right? And so we start looking at that, but hydrogen doesn't need to do that. Hydrogen can do it all on its own. It doesn't need to be neutralized, right? Because it's so small. It's such a small particle, and so the fucoidan, it helps with that by creating that hydrogen scaffold, and so it can help different things, including traumatic brain injuries, strokes, things like that, and so I really kind of liked reading that one. That was a good article. And so then we start looking at some of the other things. Like last week we talked about curcuma longa. You remember talking about curcuma longa?
I don't know, that's a long word. Do I remember that?
Yeah. Well, you just took your brain vitality right before we got on the call, didn't you?
I took an age pill.
Oh, I thought you took your brain vitality.
No.
Okay, I think you said you took.
Yeah, I double dosed on my age pill today.
Oh, okay. Well,
I mean, I already double dosed.
you already doubled those, and it's only noon.
Right.
Well, take some more this afternoon, and let's see if we can get you to have that niacin flush.
No, I don't think I want that.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine. He took his product for the first time. He got it on Friday morning. He took it Friday night, and he said he had such a bad niacin flush. He said he was seeing visions, like he was on a vision quest. Out in the
What?
But we won't get into that. That's a whole nother thing. But anyhow, curcuma longa. Curcuma longa is a form of curcumin that's it's probably the most effective. It's the best form. I was talking about Tom about it this weekend, and they found that it, and this is where we were talking about last week, that it helps out with people that have Alzheimer's. Remember that? Did I lose you? Anyhow, curcuma longa is the most effective form. Plus, we go one step further and we concentrate it. We have a 98% concentration where I was on the internet trying to compare our product to other things on the market. And you know, I just like to compare. I want to see what the competition is doing. And the other forms are curcumin and even the curcumin longa. They're only 95% concentrate. We use a 98% curcuma. And so you can go back to last week and you can kind of see what it says about that. But you know, you remember we were talking about how they're saying that Alzheimer's might be type 3 diabetes. Do you remember that, Andrea?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. And so one of the herbs or the supplements that I remember hearing about years ago for dealing with people with diabetes was something called fenugreek.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so I used to use fenugreek. I'd recommend it. I can't say prescribe, but I'd recommend it to my patients that had diabetes, right? and so they found that fenugreek helps with the blood sugar. They also find that it reduces cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, the bad fats, which reduce your risk of strokes, heart attacks, high blood pressure, hardening of the arteries, and various forms of dementia. Interesting. So here's another connection in your brain. You should be thinking, well, if it works for diabetes, wouldn't it work for people that have brain conditions like dementia and things like that? The answer is yes. And so they did some more studies, and they found that it had, and these are studies on rats, right? But they found that fenugreek showed neuroprotective effect against getting Alzheimer's.
That's cool. And you know, I was just checking my cupboard. I have this in a tea form. You can buy it in a tea form and drink it.
Yeah. So we put a concentrated form, which is different than what you'll get in a tea. But yeah, I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt to add it in other places, right? Like an herbal tea, a medicine tea, like what you got, and you can get it there. And so they found that it's an adjunct treatment, so it helps with neurological conditions like antidepressant, neuroprotective, cognitive modulation in people with Parkinson's disease as well. Right, and they found that if they that they're going to continue to study it, but they found that it might have an effect on dementia markers in the human brain. And last week, remember we were talking about the markers. Dr. Kim's going to be doing that saliva test that looks for the markers.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, and it's got some antioxidant properties and anti-inflammatory. And I'm just looking at this list here. It goes on and on and on and on and on, right? And then we have another ingredient in our brain vitality product. It's called a citrulline, right? Citrulline, and they originally found this helped out with, and they were recommending for people who had strokes, but they also found that it's an effective cognitive enhancer, right? And so it's an over-the-counter dietary supplement here in the United States. Some countries, it's actually a drug over in some European countries. Interesting, huh?
Mm-hmm.
But your body makes it. Your body makes it. And but they found in Japan that if they give it to somebody within 24 hours of having a stroke, they were more likely to manage a full recovery as opposed to those people who did not. They found that people that had glaucoma had a noticeable improvement when they added the citrulline because it helped with the pressure buildup of the fluid in the eye. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
They're saying here, I'm reading this, it says it helps to restore the memory in older persons. It helps with the recovery of strokes, attention and deficit disorder, vision, nourishing the optic nerves, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, so kind of cool. So that's also found in Brain Vitality. What a great product, right? What a great product. And then then we talk about something, and here's a long word for you: phosphatidylserine.
Hmm.
Could you attempt to spell that? Phosphatidylserine.
I don't think I can, Kurt.
So phosphatidylserine. It's another what they call nootropic or smart drug, but it's a supplement. And so phosphatidylserine, the research and benefits are focused on the brain. It's naturally occurring in the brain, and it's got some synergistic effects. In those people that are elderly, it prevents cognitive decline. They say in one Japanese study with elderly people, they found that if they took this for 6 months, they could get rid of the decline from aging and the signs of dementia. Another study with Alzheimer's patients found that 3 weeks of supplements would reduce the symptoms. So the evidence that they're saying with this is that if we give it to middle-aged and elderly people, maybe we can prevent some of the symptoms by using some of this phosphatidylserine, right? And it's found in our Brain Vitality. You don't have to go out and learn how to spell it. You just need to learn how to spell brain, B-R-A-I-N, vitality, V-I-T-A-L-I-T-Y, Brain Vitality, because it's in there. They're finding it helps with kids with ADD. They found that in one study, they did 2 months of the supplement. It reduced the symptoms of ADD. It reduced the impulsivity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure is a lot better than giving people the Adderall.
Oh, yeah. Anything about seizures in that research?
I didn't look up any seizures on it, any seizure type stuff. I can look that up. I can tell you. But yeah, isn't that kind of cool? So, folks, I'll tell you, the thing about it is that as we look at all of this and we look at the different things, you'll hear me talking about omega-3s are good here, omega-3s are good there. You'll hear me talk about magnesium is good here, magnesium is good there. You'll hear me talking about these different peptides and amino acids and all these different things, right? And the only place that you'll find the different parts of the body listed separately is in a textbook. In your body, everything is connected. There's a connection between everything. I was just reading this morning. I like to read a lot, so I was reading this morning, and they found that you want to have tight connections between cells. Think of it kind of like Velcro. And so your cells are kind of zipped together with Velcro.
Mm-hmm.
Now what happens is that Velcro starts to rip apart. And if you can take and push it back together, you're going to create those tight junctions again. And all of a sudden, things start to work better. And all of these things that we're talking about, what you're doing is you're pushing the Velcro strips back together. Right? Isn't that an easy way? Now you can think about it in your head. And so I was reading this morning, they were talking about the health of the digestive system. And they said that if you can zip up the Velcro in your gut and you can create the tight junctions between the cells in your gut, they're saying within 16 minutes, you can see effects. 16 minutes.
Wow.
Right? And so, as I'm reading through all of that, the one disease that they're seeing coming back, this was a disease of pirates. You know what disease that is?
Not scurvy. The other
Scurvy.
One. Oh, is it scurvy?
Yeah, they're saying 8% of Americans now have scurvy again.
Really?
8%. Holy cow, with all the food that we eat, how can we have scurvy?
Because there's no nutrition in our food.
Bingo. There's no nutrition in our food. And people tell me all the time, they say, oh, yeah, I don't need to do any of those supplements that you have.
Right.
I just eat right. I just eat right. I said, really? You think you eat better than I do? And I still take supplements, right? 50% of Americans are deficient on vitamin C. 50%.
Wow, and vitamin C has so many great properties for the body too.
Oh man, it's just it's amazing. And so when people tell me these things, I go, well, I would dare to say that most people probably think they eat okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And half of them still are deficient on vitamin C.
That's crazy.
Almost 1 in 10 has scurvy. If you're walking around today and you're talking to people and you talk to 10 people, at least one of those 10 has scurvy.
Wow. And, getting a really good source of vitamin C is important too. Not just like, some vitamin C lozenges you picked up, walking out of your local big box store.
Yeah, right? I don't know. I mean, I just look at this stuff and I go, there's so much science behind it, right? And I think, I could go outside and I could build my dog a doghouse. I'd feel comfortable building a doghouse. I mean, if I wanted to build a shed, which I've done, I could do that. But I certainly wouldn't want to build a house. And so when we start talking about these things, for those of you that are listening to the call, share the call with people. Don't try and become the scientist. Don't try and become that guy, because the people you're talking to now, they think they have to become a scientist. They have to go, look up this stuff that I'm looking up. I mean, I know where to look it up.
See, and that's why I said I'm the host, you're the doctor.
I know, but if I keep questioning on it, right? Here's the deal. When somebody gives you a question, what does your brain try and do?
Find the answer.
Find the answer. It tries to find the answer. Exactly, right? So if I keep giving you questions, eventually you're gonna know all the answers because I've already asked you all the questions.
That's right.
And then I can just go back to bed or whatever I want to do.
Oh, I don't think we're going to let you do that.
I'll let you take over. You do that.
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, we've gone past a few minutes here. It's 11:38 my time, 12:38 your time. And folks, I hope that you're living in a part of the world that's not getting burnt up by fires. I hope that you're not getting flooded like they are on the East Coast. I hope that your house isn't blowing up for no apparent reason and things like that. I mean, what a crazy world we're living in. And just try and stay as healthy as you possibly can. I mean, it's they're finding that I just got to bring this one last thing up because I was reading up on it because somebody asked me about it the other day. Glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, Monsanto, now bought out by Bayer, the big pharmaceutical giant. It's affecting us all, every one of us, no matter if you live in Utah or Oregon or California where there's fires, or you're in Massachusetts where there's homes blowing up, or North Carolina where they're getting flooded, things like that. But we're all affected by glyphosate. And glyphosate, what it does is it unzips that Velcro. It unzips the Velcro. And so how do you put it back together? Well, they're finding that if you can feed your digestive system, and we'll talk about that a little bit more on a future call, but if you can feed your digestive system, that's where it all starts. And that's where it all starts. That's where the problem starts. But where do you notice the first symptoms? Actually in your nose. The problem starts in the gut, but the symptoms start in the nose. You start to notice, that you have more allergies, you cough, you sneeze, you have nasal drip, things like that. That's where the first symptoms show up. But we'll talk about that at a later time, okay?
That's interesting. And, that can be homework for people. They can go and look up leaky gut syndrome and glyphosate and where to find how they're getting exposed to glyphosate. It would be a good thing for us all to go do this week.
There you go.
So thank you, Dr. Kurt, for again contributing all of your good knowledge to us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And anyone who was on the call, you know, you heard Dr. Kurt mention a few products. People on this call, and Dr. Kurt, myself, and thousands of others are associated with a company called Sisel International. And the person who invited you to this call probably has a link for the products that we mentioned on the site, and you can get back with them and ask them for that link, and you can just go into their website and explore all the different things that are in there, because you might find just the very thing you've been looking for. So we appreciate you joining us this Tuesday, and we hope that you make it a practice to join us each and every Tuesday at noon for the doctor's call. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, everyone.